God, please lead us now. Please speak to us. Help us to find our confidence and our hope in you and trust you with every step. In Jesus' name, amen. One of the hardest things about being single is just wondering if you're ever going to get that happy ever after. One of the hardest things about dating is wondering who's going to give you that happy ever after. And then if, by the will of God, you eventually get married, one of the hardest things is wondering, how are we going to make this thing our happy ever after? So before we launch into how to be single, how to do dates and all of that, we need to get the perspective right. And here's a really hopeful, encouraging thing that you can hold on to and take from this. Singleness is finite. It's not forever. Amen? Dating is finite. It's not forever. Even bigger amen, because that can do your head in. Here's the one that really blew my mind when this really sunk into my heart, is that marriage is not forever. That's finite as well. For the Christian, whether we're single or dating or married, we all end up with the same happy ever after. It's right near the back of the book, appropriately. Let me read to you from Revelation chapter 19. This is like the big moment, the climax of all of history. This is what happens. This is the scene in heaven. Revelation 19. Then I heard what seemed to be the voice of a great multitude, like the roar of many waters, and like the sound of mighty peals of thunder, crying out, "Hallelujah! For the Lord our God, the Almighty, reigns. Let us rejoice and exult and give him glory. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. It was granted her to clothe herself with fine linen, bright and pure, for the fine linen is the righteous deeds of the saints." Here's the thing. This is our happy ever after. I really want you to get this. It's not whoever you meet and that perfect wedding day here on earth. It just is totally eclipsed by this wedding feast where there's just the peal of thunder and rushing waters and hallelujah, this is the moment. This is our happy ever after, where it's us and Jesus together forever. All of us get that. And it's the perfect arrangement. It's a wedding feast that you don't have to pay for. You don't have to plan the little presents at the different seating and everything like that. You don't have to argue over the placemats or the tablecloths or anything like that. You don't have to worry about what to wear, because that's all there for you. You just turn up. This is the easiest wedding you're ever going to have to prepare for, and the best, and probably the most challenging as well. But this is our happy ever after. And until we've got that in our heads and our hearts, and until that is really exciting us, we're going to really struggle with singleness, with dating, with marriage. So that's the big picture. Did you want to add to that, Sarah?
I think it's important for me to start, as I start, I'm going to be speaking about singleness in a second, to just acknowledge a couple of things. One is that we have a really broad age of people in here. And first, I just want to speak to those of you who are in school, the teenagers. Thank you so much for being here. I recognise when you come to hear about singleness and dating, you really want to hear about dating, and that probably for a lot of you, because when I was there, that would have been me, a lot of you will be looking at me, 29 and single, and going, I do not want to be her. I get that. And I really appreciate that you're here, and I hope that some of the stuff that I have to say will really touch you. There's also people here who have known me forever, who are my close friends, and I'm still living this. Like, I'm still single, and it's still hard sometimes, and some of you have seen me fall apart. My housemate Anita probably saw me fall apart 2 weeks ago. So I'm not perfect at this. I've come a long way, but I'm just really conscious that you're going to have to be gracious to me as you hear some of the stuff that I say, because you know with my stories and what I talk about when I'm not perfect. And there's also some people here who are older than me and who have been doing this for a lot longer than I have. And I just really want to honour you, because a lot of you are people that I look up to. I know, like Gwynnie, thank you for being here. I've gone to Gwynnie about things before, and she just has such a wealth of wisdom. So I'm by no means the person in this room with the most experience. I'm just the one who's been honoured with this task. So one thing about singleness, and I'm going to kind of get back to what Jeremy was saying, is that it's probably, of all the things that we deal with, it's one thing you're guaranteed to deal with. Even if you're only single for like all of 2 seconds, everybody is single at some stage. So if you're in high school, you will be single for a period of time. And this is not about how to deal with lifelong singleness, although that may come into it. It's how to deal with singleness where you're at. And some of you are probably single again, and some of you will be single for a long time, longer than you wanted, and some of you will be single for probably 2 seconds, but hopefully there's something in here for all of you. As Jeremy and I were discussing this, like Jeremy has brilliantly kicked off, we kind of realised that we need to start from looking at things a little bit from God's perspective, and the fact that we're not actually just talking about life. And one thing that we're really challenged by, talk about that, I think, Matt, you can go to the next slide, thanks, is that the whole Christian life actually only makes sense because of the resurrection of Jesus and because of his promise that we'll be raised. In fact, I think you can see on the screen, I've probably paraphrased it a little bit, but there's this verse in 1 Corinthians 15, probably 2 that I smushed together. If Christ has not been raised, our preaching is futile, and so is your faith. If only for this life we have hope in Christ, we are to be pitied above all men. And that's just so powerful. I love Paul that he just like goes straight in. Basically, he's saying, if Jesus hasn't been raised, if there is no heaven, sucks to be you as a Christian. And I think as a single person, we need to have that perspective, and we need to recognise that this life is about so much more. And if it's not about so much more, then there is no hope in the difficult circumstances in which you find yourself. So one thing that I'll say something else first, but another thing that we need to I don't need to make you aware of it, you are aware of it, but in the culture in which we live, singleness can be seen as a positive thing. It's the whole idea of a power woman, a career woman, feminism makes it okay for a woman to be unmarried and childless. But what is not okay, and what the world will pity you for, is that if you're a Christian and you're living as the Bible says a Christian should live, you're not having sex. And the world will absolutely pity you for that. And that's a very challenging thing as a single Christian, to embrace the fact that it's okay to be single and to not be having sex, even though the world is pitying you. And the reason we can do that is because we're not living for now. We're living for eternity. Because like Paul says, if there's no eternity, then we should be pitied, because we're giving up things and we are living in such a way that we're not always gratifying the lusts of our sinful nature. So yeah, it's Jeremy and I felt we're going to sort of talk a little bit separately. I'm going to talk first about singleness, and then Jeremy's going to talk to you about dating. But we really wanted to make sure that you've got at the beginning this overarching understanding that this is not just about now. This is something that is eternal. Singleness is not eternal, but life is eternal, and singleness and dating is just now. So I think you can see on the screen, I just said if there is no resurrection, the pain of your singleness is meaningless and futile. But if there is a resurrection, not only is your pain light and momentary, Paul says that, in the context of all eternity, it is light and momentary, but also it can be used for indescribable joy and glory for God. And that's what I want to talk about a bit today. How can we as single people find joy where God has placed us now? And God may not have you single forever, probably not. Statistically, you're more likely to get married than not. But where God has placed you now, there can be joy, particularly if you have that eternal mindset. One thing that I just, as we were looking at this, that I just really warmed my heart about God is Jeremy and I were talking about this amazing eternal mindset. And if we could hold on to that eternal mindset every single second of every single day, we would just be happy all the time. It's like such an amazing, all of those troubles we come across during the week wouldn't even faze us because we'd have an eternal mindset. But God knows that we are dust, and God knows that we don't always see the world perfectly as he sees it. And he meets us in that, and he's so compassionate. So he looks at me as his child and goes, wow, Sarah, if you could see the big picture, if you could see how much glory and joy there is in your eternity despite these circumstances, you wouldn't even care for a second that you're single. But I know it hurts now. And he gets down in there with us, just like Jesus came to earth. He gets down in the painful humanity and he has compassion. And I think that's such a beautiful thing about God. So while we have this overarching perspective that is eternal, that God wants us to have, that we need to keep going back to, we can also talk about the fact that singleness can hurt, and God is with us in that. One story that I had that I just want to share with you about singleness hurting, this is maybe something that you can relate to, is I always, like many of you, particularly those of you who are younger, had this plan for my life. And it wasn't like a plan, like I'd set it out exactly when it was going to happen. It was an assumption. Of course I'm going to get married. Everybody does get married. And I'll probably get married in my early 20s because I want to have children by this stage and blah, blah, blah. And it didn't go according to plan, which was like quite a surprise to me because I kind of thought I was in control of my life, and it just didn't work out how I thought it would. And I remember when I was 24, I just turned 24, and I was very privileged to be able to buy a unit. I bought a 2-bedroom unit. And that was an exciting time of my life, but I went for a walk as I was making the decision. This was obviously more money than I'd ever dealt with in my life, most of which I didn't have, the bank had. But I went down and I was sitting on this bridge at the river, and I sometimes used to go and just watch the ducks and look at the trees and just think about how God is in control of nature. And I just felt this overwhelming sense of grief because this was my life and I was doing it on my own. I was going to move out of my parents' home. I was buying a house. I was doing all of those things that you're supposed to do to set up your life with your husband or with your wife. And I was making plans for myself, for my future by myself. And that really, really hurt for me to go, God, why am I doing this by myself? Why am I still alone? Why am I having to make plans to look after myself? Where is the man that I'm supposed to be having this conversation with, that we're supposed to be buying a house together? And the reason I share that is just to say that I get it, that I get that there are times when it is such a deep part of you and it's such a part of your identity sometimes that it's this thing that's deep inside you that just hurts, and that's okay. And you can't stay in the hurt, but it's okay that it hurts. So in order to live life as a joyful single person, so for those of you who are younger who are looking at me going, oh my gosh, I hope I'm not single when I'm 30, you can actually get here and be really happy. I never thought that was possible. I was sure that if I'd known when I was 18 I'd be 29 and single and talking to you, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I must be so weird. But I'm only a little bit weird and I'm mostly normal. So one thing that I really want you to take away from today is you will be single for a time in your life. How do you find the most joy from God in that time? And the verse that we've chosen that will overarch our single segment is Matthew 6, verse 33, which is up on the screen. Can you even see? Oh, you can see what's on the screen. I can't see anything back there. So sorry, I'm going to have to refer to my notes. But Matthew 6:33, it's a familiar verse, I'm sure, to you. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. The main priority for us as single people, and for everybody, but we're focusing on single people, is to seek first God's kingdom. And a great thing about the seek first is it doesn't rule out the fact that you can still pursue marriage. Just don't seek it first. You need to really work out in your life what is your number one priority, and that has to be God and his kingdom. I really love what King David says in Psalm 73. I'm sure you know this verse. He's crying out to God and he says, whom have I in heaven but you? And on earth there is none I desire besides you. And that challenges me because David had more wives than I can even remember how many there are. And he had a lot of concubines. So he was having a lot of what the world would call fun. And he still, despite having everything, riches, fame, wealth, women, he said to God, whom have I in heaven but you? When we get to the end of our life and we die, we're not, and I know this is kind of hard to believe, we're not going to get to heaven and the person we are most excited to see is our husband or wife. In fact, there is no marriage in heaven. Marriage is for earth. We are going to be so ecstatic to see God, and if God is not in heaven, it's not heaven. And so for David to say, whom have I in heaven but you, gives us a little bit of perspective. And then he says, and on earth there is none I desire besides you. So even the man who had everything recognized that there was no one and nothing on this earth that could fulfill him more than God could. And so by seeking first God's kingdom, we need to realign our minds to recognize that there is something so much greater than the things that we seek after. Sometimes, I don't know who you allow to speak into your life. I'm not always good at letting people speak into my life, but one person who always can speak into my life is God, because he's God, and sometimes he doesn't give me a choice. But one thing he just really convicted me on quite recently was, Sarah, are you trying to conform my will to yours, or are you trying to conform your will to mine? And I realised on this issue of singleness, I am constantly trying to conform God's will to mine. I'm constantly praying about, God, I really want you to do this because this is what I want for my life, and I want a husband because of this, this, and this. And it's okay to go to God with what we want. God talks about that. But is it me trying to manipulate God's best for me to fit what I think is my best for me? Or am I actually willing to conform my will to his and seek first his kingdom before seeking first what I think my kingdom should look like? So that's our overarching verse. So I'm going to give you 3.5 ways that you can seek first God's kingdom in your singleness. The first one is by surrendering. Sorry about your notes, by the way. They're sort of all right, but Jeremy and I had to put in the notes before we'd finished writing what we were talking about, so they don't really match up very well, but you can just write notes on the paper. So surrendering. God's plan has to come first. That's what we were made for, and I think that makes sense in what I've been talking about. God's kingdom, what he wants, has to come before what you want, because he's God and you're not. And what he wants is greater and is more important. And sometimes as a single person, you need to ask yourself the question, who is my life about? Who am I living for? Because God may ask things of you that are difficult. And if you're living for him and his kingdom, you can surrender your plans and you can embrace his plans. And you need to let him be God, and you need to let him have the authority in your life to ask things of you that you would rather him not ask. Sorry, I just shared a story a bit out of order. Another thing that you sort of need to come to grips with singleness, which I'm probably still working through, but certainly I read something in a book that really stuck with me several years ago, is that marriage is not a right. I don't have a right to get married, and you don't have a right to get married. And just because the majority of people do, doesn't mean it's a guarantee for us, or that God owes it to us, or that the world owes it to us, or that we owe it to ourselves. We've given up our rights as Christians. We've given them over in surrender to God, and we've said, God, your way is the way I'm going to walk, and my rights go on the altar. And sometimes, I've heard this metaphor, sometimes you have to keep going back to the altar, because what you want tends to crawl off the altar and come back to you, and you have to keep surrendering it. But it's really important to allow yourself to come to terms with that. God may ask me to be single, and he has the right to do that, and I don't have the right to be married. But that just flows in beautifully to our next point, which I won't go to yet, because I just do want to share one quote with you from Elizabeth Elliot. She's just such an amazing, inspiring woman who unfortunately passed away. Well, unfortunately for us, fortunately for her, she's in glory, but passed away recently. And she, in her book, Passion and Purity, was writing about her feelings for her soon-to-be husband, Jim Elliot. And she said, a good and perfect gift these natural desires, but so much more than necessary that they be restrained, controlled, and even crucified, that they may be reborn in power and purity for God. Your desires to be with somebody, to be married, are not wrong. They're desires that can come from God. God created marriage. It's a beautiful thing, and it's beautiful for you to desire that. But your desires for that cannot come above God's desires for your life. They need to go on the altar. And an amazing thing about God is, as you surrender your desires, if he gives them back to you, if he gives you the gift of marriage after you've surrendered it, he gives it back in such a more pure, awesome way than what you could have experienced if you were grabbing for it for yourself. So the second way that we can seek God's kingdom. So the first one is by surrendering, and the second one just dovetails beautifully into that, and that's by trusting. The great thing about surrendering to God is that we are surrendering to a God who we can trust. We need to recognise that not only is God's agenda for our life more important than our own, but it's actually also more joyous and more fulfilling. And that's a really hard thing to trust God for. That really challenges you on your faith and your belief in God. Do you actually believe that God wants the best for you and that his plan for you is going to bring you greater joy than your plan for yourself? It won't bring you greater joy if you're fighting it, but if you surrender to God's plan, can you trust him that the God who knows you better than you know yourself actually knows what is best for you and what will make you rejoice the most? And I've had to come to terms with that, recognizing that God knows my personality and my desires and the depth of who I am and my eternity that I know nothing about yet so much better than I do. And with all of that knowledge and insight, is it possible that he would say to me, not if he could, because he could, but that he desires to say to me, Sarah, I know that you want to be married, but I also know that one day in glory, you'll look back and go, thank you, God, for giving me what I actually wanted and didn't know I wanted. That's kind of hard to come to terms with because our own wants are so there and primary in our minds. But I just even look at my life so far and I have no regrets that I've been single till 29. I don't look back. There is not one single point in my life where I go, I wish I'd gotten married then. I wish I'd gotten married at 22. I wish I'd gotten married at 25. I don't at all. I still desire to get married. But I can see that God has given me things in my life that I actually wanted much more than I wanted to be married at 22. And I'm sure if I'd been married at 22, I would probably say the same thing. But I can just see that God actually knew me better than I knew myself and actually gave me what my deep heart desire was, even though I didn't think that was my desire. So we can actually trust him with that. Another thing we need to do by trusting God is we need to stop stressing about the gift of singleness. In the chapter on singleness in the book, I did go through the theology of singleness, but people get so caught up in, oh my gosh, what if I've got the gift of singleness and I don't want it? And if I start to accept I might have the gift of singleness, then I'm just proving I do have the gift of singleness, and I can't bear to be happy as a single person because that'll confirm I have the gift of singleness, which I really don't want.
Sounds like you don't have it. Sorry.
So you need to stop stressing about that, and you need to recognise, good point, you possibly don't have it, but you need to recognise that what God has given you now is a gift, it is singleness, and there are awesome things about that that you need to embrace without stressing about whether you can psych God out in the end game, because you can't. You just end up psyching yourself out and not being very happy. So God gives good gifts, so you need to trust. Firstly, you need to believe that. Does God give only good gifts? Then you need to recognise that sometimes hard things happen in life, and if God only gives good gifts and he brings difficult things into our path, is it possible that good gifts sometimes hurt a little bit? I think it is. And I think as a single person, trusting that God gives good gifts, I can go, do you know what? God's singleness in my life is a gift. That is good. And I might not understand why now, but I have no doubt that when I'm in heaven one day, one, I won't care about any of the pain, and two, I'll recognise that it was a good gift, that God was doing something in me that was much more valuable than what he would have given me otherwise. One of the keys to a happy life, which is found in Philippians 4:11, is when Paul says, I've learned in whatever situation I am to be content. Part of trusting God is trusting him that he gives good gifts and being content in that, and recognising that all those things that you want, if God hasn't given it to you, then it's for your good, it's for his glory, it's for that ultimate eternal perspective, and be content in that. And there is so much joy that comes in contentment. I remember my dad saying the one thing, if he could give his kids, as we grew up, one thing, it would be contentment. Because if you have contentment, you can find joy in any situation. You only have to go to kids in Africa who are, playing on the streets, who aren't educated, who have none of the stuff we have, and see contentment, and you also see with that more joy than what we have in our wealthy country in Australia. And you need to cultivate contentment as a single person, because if you're not content as a single person, you won't be content as a married person, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't feel I could really authoritatively speak on that.
No, I'll give you an authoritative yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, marriage will not fix you.
So the third thing that we need to do in order to seek first God's kingdom above our own is serve. A couple of years back, this was a real turning point in my life, and I don't think it was gospel, like I don't think it was prophetic, but I do think God used it at the time. I was having a conversation with Tiana Green, who was not yet married, and we were having a conversation about various things, and then she turned to me in her very blunt, insightful Tiana way, and she goes, "Sarah, I don't think you are ever going to get married. I think God's going to keep you single, and I think you have the gift of singleness because you are just serving God in such an amazing way, and I don't think you're ever going to get married." And I was just like, excuse me? But God used that. I wouldn't recommend just going and randomly saying that to people, but I'm so grateful to Tiana for saying that to me because God used that at a time in my life when I had to wake up and go, I might actually be single, and I have to be okay with that. Because if that's God's plan for my life, and if God, as my God, wants to use me as a single person, he has every right to, and he has also promised that I can be content and joyful in my circumstances. And so I need to start looking for ways to thrive as a single person. And that was such a changing moment in my life. And I think from then on, I started to go, okay, I'm going to stop obsessing about whether I'm going to get married, and I'm actually going to live out life as a single person who has joy, not despite singleness, but even in singleness. So I became determined not to waste my single years. I don't want to get married and face the challenges of marriage and look back and go, I didn't know how good I had it. So I started looking for things that would tell me how good I had it. And I found so many that it almost started to make me wonder if maybe I actually did have the gift of singleness. So the positives, you will be amazed what you find. God has blessed me so abundantly. I have amazing friends. I've been able to go on amazing adventures and travel and all sorts of things that married people can't always do. I've been able to be involved in so much more ministry in the church than I would have otherwise. In fact, one amazing thing is that the greatest ministry opportunities that I've had in my life have come out of the deepest pain. Like writing this book is one of my most amazing opportunities that I've had in ministry, and yet in a convoluted way that actually came out of 10 years of chronic illness. That's a big part in how I came to write this book, and then it also came out of singleness. And the blessing that I'm receiving from those trials now really is starting to outweigh the trials. I also have more time, and I have, I think, a lot more disposable income, and I can spend my money however I want, with God's permission, whenever I want. I can buy things without consulting with somebody. I can go to bed at night and just have peace. Not that that's always what you want, but sometimes it's nice. I can have alone time when I want. I can go out when I want. I don't have to ask anyone's permission for anything. I'm not trying to say singleness is better than marriage, because it's not, but it's pretty darn good if you start looking for the positive things. And if you want to thrive as a single person, you've got to cultivate this attitude of thankfulness. I'm so thankful for those things, because one day, if God blesses me with marriage, I'll have to give them up, and that will be a sacrifice. There are things you have to give up in order to be married, and there are things that you gain, but being thankful for what you've got now is such a blessing and can make you so joyful. So don't just be selfish with it though. Appreciate the blessings and thank God for it, but don't use it as an opportunity to spend all your money on yourself, travel whenever and wherever you want. Use it as an opportunity to invest in God's kingdom. Use it as an opportunity to serve people in your church, to serve in ministry, to actually make a difference for the kingdom of God in ways that you couldn't do if you were married. 1 Corinthians 7, I've once again it's on the screen. I've mashed lots of little bits of verses because it's a whole chapter. If you're feeling discouraged about being single, read 1 Corinthians 7, because Paul is, to use a boy term, frothing off it. And so he basically says, the time is short. You are only here for a little while. This world in its present form is passing away. So there's this sense of urgency. You're not here forever. And then he says, and he talks awesomely to women, because women don't always get a look in. An unmarried woman is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit. You may live in undivided devotion to the Lord. You have this amazing opportunity as a single person. Don't waste it. Get serving. The final thing, which I'm going to sort of say a little bit about, and then Jeremy's going to take over, is you can seek first God's kingdom by living in deep spiritual community. We were made for community and we were made for relationship. You can't actually just be single on your own. We were made for relationships, and that's why even as single people who are happy, like, we do crave that. I do crave that intimacy and that connection with somebody. But God has provided his church as a way of having deep spiritual community where we can relate to each other. And it's really important to cultivate that. I think it's something girls are generally fairly okay at. Girls are quite good at communicating and getting deep emotionally, so I have been so blessed by that. I can't even believe how much God has blessed me as a 29-year-old single person that I have other Christian single girlfriends. I think in generations gone by that would have been so rare. And I also have Sarah and Rob Medlow, who are two of my closest friends, have let me into their life so much as a married couple. So I've just been abundantly blessed as a single person. But one thing that you do need to be cautious about, and I talked about this a little bit in the women's session, is you do need to be cautious about deep spiritual friendship that is cross-gender. Because the way that God has designed men and women is kind of like a fuel source and a flame, and they're kind of made to ignite. And you get the two too close together and sometimes things can explode. So, not literally, but you just need to be conscious if you're developing deep spiritual friendship with somebody of the opposite gender, that gender-wise, the two genders were made to go together in a different way than same genders were meant to go together, and it can get complex, and you can end up hurting each other, and you can end up getting too deep with somebody you didn't intend to get deep with. So cultivate same-gender friendships.
I want to just say something to the guys. This is something that shocked me when I realised what had happened to me. I was single all through my 20s. I got married at 29 and a half. Just made it.
So true.
It's what it felt like. And I had all these really good friends, really close male friends through my 20s. And then I realised somewhere halfway through my 30s that they were gone. And you guys, especially you younger guys, you need to make the most of this opportunity now to cultivate deep spiritual friendship. Because you need it now. It's part of our vision as a church, that we see a church where everyone is growing in deep spiritual friendship with each other, because we spur each other on like that. We help each other through these challenging times of singleness and dating and marriage and every season of life and every part of life and every challenge of life. Guys, you need to do it. And here's what shocked me, is that one of two things will happen. You'll get married and you'll be immersed in this marriage world, and your wife, who, speaking in generalities here, but girls are really good at keeping those friends, like you said. You'll end up hanging out with your wife's friends' husbands, and you'll have nothing in common, but you'll just hang out, and you kind of lose what you had here with these other guys. So you'll either get married and you'll lose those connections unless you're diligently pursuing them, or all your friends will get married and you'll be left on your own. So right now, guys, get deep into spiritual friendship with each other. Have those deep conversations. We were talking a little bit about it in the last session. But yeah, it's scary how quickly it can be taken from you as a man. Just the way our society is set up. Girls tend to keep it. They have their mums groups and they have other kinds of things that they do. They just carve out time and spend time with each other. But guys, we miss it. We can't afford to miss it. So that's singleness.
There's just one thing I need to add to that, and this is something that I think is really important. In Australian culture, we have this sort of blokey culture where it's okay for blokes to be like mates and go camping and fishing together. But one thing that I've seen even in the church, and it just breaks my heart because as a woman, I've been quite hurt by guys who are using me for their emotional connection because they didn't have guys to go to. Is that there is this cultural stigma that we put on people where if two guys become really close friends and are in deep spiritual friendship and don't fit the blokey, surfy, camping, fishing mould, we question their sexuality. And that is not on. It's so destructive. And I've even seen with friends of mine where two guys are getting along really well and people start whispering or making comments The word gay as a derogatory term has no place in the church, in the mouths of Christians, and even questioning somebody's sexuality based on their friendship with another guy is so destructive. So girls can do it a little bit, but I've seen it come from guys where two guys are good mates and some comments made about, oh, that's so gay. That's not cool. It's destroying them. It's so disrespectful to people who are struggling with same-sex attraction. And it's not honouring God. It's not honouring anybody. So we need to banish that. We need to celebrate guys who are getting into these friendships, because I think a lot of guys are afraid to hold on to close friendships with each other because they're so scared of what people will think about their sexuality.
Yeah. We've got a heap to get through. So what we've done is, in the back of our notes, we've got a list of books if you want to read more stuff. There's 2 books there I'll point you to. One is called True Friendship. The other one's called Spiritual Friendship. And they're both really good, both quite short, but they talk about the importance of that, particularly to men, to develop deep spiritual friendship. So have a look at them. But I want us to move over to dating, because we're running out of time. Again, with dating, we need to look at the big picture. We need to remember that dating is finite, and our ultimate goal, like they say, like a lot of dating advice books will tell you, you got to have this end goal in sight. Who are you going to marry? Don't just mess around with anyone back here. Think about, is this going to lead to marriage? And I think that's a good question, but that's only half of the end goal. Like, that's not even the end goal. That's a step. And maybe not even a necessary step, but the end goal is this happy ever after with Jesus forever. That's where we want to get to. And so to get to that point, we don't want to do any steps in the meantime that's going to take us off here and away from that goal. So just like we had Matthew 6:33 for singleness, I'm going to focus on one verse for dating. In Philippians chapter 3, Paul talks about our citizenship is in heaven. Like, that is the end goal. That's where we're headed. The bride of Christ. We belong to heaven. And so out of that, in Philippians 4, he talks about, so this is how you got to live as a citizen of heaven right here on earth. And in verse 8, he says, finally, brothers, and that's brothers and sisters, you see it in the little note down the bottom. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you've learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. Obviously, he's talking about all these things like true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, excellent, worthy of praise. You immediately you should get this picture of Jesus. He's saying, think about Jesus. But he also extends that. He says, whatever is lovely. And so what I want us to think is, he's saying, think about these good things and let those thoughts then act upon those things. Let them turn into action. So we were discussing this verse and I thought, wow, this is awesome. This is a really good test for how you are dating someone, for how you are considering dating, and for looking at people around you who are dating and how you can help them. So even if you're not in a dating situation, we're just going to go through each of these qualities and just got some questions. And you might want to jot these down, and we're going to go through them really quickly. But just some questions that can keep you on that right track from stepping away from your end goal, which is to end up with Jesus forever. Amen? So here we go. Finally, brothers, whatever is true. So just some questions out of that. Are you aware of the true nature of your relationship? Like, if you're in a dating relationship, are you aware of the true nature of that? It's really easy to just get carried away and think that the things are awesome, that this is beautiful. But are you operating truthfully, or are you being deluded? Are you telling yourself things like, he's really not that bad? Or she'll change. Like, just give us some time. When we get engaged, things are going to be different. Or I might actually, by dating him, bring him closer to Jesus, which doesn't actually happen. And it's heartbreaking how I've seen that. Dating someone who doesn't belong to Jesus just pulls you away. But true, embracing the truth of your relationship, knowing the truth of it. And then that was Sarah's point, that last one. Thanking God for where he's put you now. embracing the truth of where you are now, and stop fantasizing about what could be, because that's not the truth, but embrace the truth of now. Claire gave me heaps of help with this. She was awesome. But she made this comment that, guys, you need to be honest. You need to embrace truth in relationships and communicate it truthfully, particularly in a church context. Because whatever you do, girls are going to analyze it and overanalyze it and overanalyze it. So you need to be as truthful and honest and open as you can be in your dealings with women, because you want them to know the truth of where you stand with them. The next one, honourable. Are you honouring your dating partner in every way? Are you guarding his or her honour? These are good questions and questions to take hold of and really honestly ask yourself. Are you taking advantage of them? I was 18 and I was a Christian and a really nice guy on paper. And I got together with this girl and, we'd talk about God stuff. We were actually involved in serving God in a ministry. But when we were together, and I say this to my shame, is that the thing that I was most interested in was making out. And I wasn't honouring her as a person. And pretty soon she figured that out, that as nice as I seemed to be, that there was just no honour in this relationship. And she dumped me. In fact, she dumped me twice. But that's another story. Another thing is to honour when someone says they're not interested. If you're honestly pursuing someone and they say, nah, I'm not interested, you got to let that go and move on. Another one that Claire pointed out to me, this was one of my rules I had for myself in my 20s, and this is maybe why it took me to 29. But honour a broken relationship. If you've broken up with someone, you got to honour that was something significant, and what you're going to deal with over the coming weeks and months might impact you in different ways at different times. So honour that relationship and give yourself some space. I used to give myself a year. Like if I went out with a girl and we broke up, that was it. Nothing for a year. Just focus on God and just dealing with picking up the pieces. Next one is just. This is a biggie. Are you acting justly towards this person's future spouse? Or are you giving or taking what isn't yours? Being just. Like, really thinking about that, like I said before, Jesus there on the couch next to you. What really helped me was not just thinking about that, but thinking about this woman's future husband, who is not necessarily me. He's there on the couch too. And whatever I do with this woman, I don't want to be acting unjustly to him. And I don't want to steal anything or take anything. And it's not just about stealing a kiss. It's not just about stealing someone's virginity or giving your virginity. But it's also about stealing a heart. Like, that person is not yours to take. Until you're married, there's so much of that person that is not yours to take. And there's so much of you that is not yours to give to them. So you need to act justly before God, and you need to act justly before whoever you end up marrying. Not stealing someone's heart. So, girls, especially you girls who love the thrill of the flirt, and you flirt and you're stringing a guy along, don't be her, because that's being unjust. That you're stealing a little piece of what's not yours. It's unjust. The next one, pure. Are you keeping pure thoughts? And are you banishing impure thoughts, particularly thoughts of your partner, but any impure thoughts? Are you keeping a pure heart? Are you keeping a pure reputation, just personally and together? Like your reputation, everyone knows that you are operating from a pure reputation, and everyone knows that when you are together, you are acting in a pure way. And there's not a hint of sexual immorality. It's not just about when you're together, but it's also about when you're alone. What do you feed yourself? Like movies you watch, or books you read, or conversations you have with your friends that can I don't know, just make your heart and your thoughts impure. Like thoughts are easily damaged by porn. Your heart is made impure by clinging to fantasy. And reputations are damaged by following through on those impure thoughts and following your impure heart. You've got to guard that, because there's so much to be lost by acting impurely. It's not just honor, but you bring in a world of hurt. Be pure. The next one is lovely. Are you lovely together? Do you bring out the best in each other? Do you genuinely love and care for this person? I just want to give you a warning here to beware of the genuinely stressful relationship. It's compromising the relationship before it's even got off the ground. Like if you're with someone and you're just continually at odds and you're just stressing each other out, and you're only at the dating stage, which is meant to be like like balloons and fairies and all kinds of sweet feeling stage, right? It's meant to be the easiest stage in a lot of ways, and it's really stressful. Then you need to really start asking yourself some hard questions. This was from Claire. If you're struggling at this point where things are meant to be all fun and roses, how are you going to function together with the stress of engagement? Or with little kids and no sleep for 4 years? It gets hard. And if at this point where you've made so little commitment to each other, but there is just so much conflict, that's maybe something you need to ask some hard questions about. Your relationship should be lovely. Lisa Anderson, who's written an awesome book, it's called The Dating Manifesto, we've got it in there as well, and honestly made me laugh out loud more than any other book I've read in a long time. She says, and this is full on, but she says, you don't have to sign up for a mess. God never said get married at all costs. He can sanctify people through singleness too. If things are hard now, seek the wisdom of others and really consider, do I need to sign up for this and for a world of hurt? Because I might be rescuing this person. God can rescue that person apart from you. That's going to take some wisdom. And if you're struggling with that kind of thing, I would just urge you to speak with someone that you trust about that and weigh up where you move forward with that. Do you genuinely love and care for this person? Claire said something, and she gave me permission to say this because this makes me look good. But she said, you should say this. But when we first got together, we were together for about a month, and me just being a typical guy, just very vague about it. And in my mind, I knew, yep, she's the one, but I hadn't really expressed that to her clearly, that whole true thing. And I had a birthday party, and I had all my friends there at the birthday party, and it was heaps of fun. And there was this moment where I grabbed her and I took her into another room and sat her down, and she's like, oh no, he's just going to tell me that it's totally not working out. But it was quite the opposite. I was like, I just wanted to know she was okay, because she didn't know all these people, and I could see that she was a bit lost in the room, and I just took her into another room. Are you okay? I'm really glad you're here, and you are the most important person at this party for me. And she said that was the moment where she thought, yeah, we're onto something lovely here. I'm in. And I won massive points that night. Lovely. Is it lovely? The next one is commendable. This is big. Do trustworthy people commend and encourage you as a couple? Do people that you really value their opinion, do they get excited about your relationship? I went out with this girl and she was exciting in a lot of ways, but she was pretty out there and she was dealing with a whole lot of family stuff. And as much as I tried to deny it, I noticed it, particularly when I introduced her to my brother, that there was this conspicuous lack of commending going on. That these people that I trusted were not getting excited about this relationship. If that's happening for you, then take that as a warning sign. People who love you and who maybe don't have the guts yet to tell you that they're worried about what's going on, or maybe they've just got this gut feeling that, I don't know what's going on. If they're not excited and commending you and saying, yes, this is really good, and these are people that you trust, right? If that's not happening, you need to ask some questions. And then another part of commendable is, do you commend each other? Like, do you take every opportunity you can to commend that person, to see the good in them and to build them up and say, I love the way you're doing that, or I really appreciate this in you, or even more, commending them in front of other people? If you're going out with someone who is doing the opposite of tearing you down in front of other people, that's not a good sign. You want to be someone who commends your partner, being commendable. Are you guys tracking all right with this? I feel like I'm rolling through it pretty quick. Excellent. Are you giving this relationship your best? Are you operating with an attitude of excellence? Like, is this just a friend relationship? Which is a term that I got from that dating manifesto book. But, oh man. Giving your time to another person and entrusting yourself in a way to this other person. Dating is such a weird thing, but you're becoming vulnerable to this other person and they're becoming vulnerable to you. And that's a big thing. And if you're not prepared to really be excellent in that situation, then that's really unfair to the other person. If someone is willing to get vulnerable with you in that way, then you need to be excellent in that relationship. There's nothing so, and I say this from personal experience, so soul-destroying as trying to keep a relationship alive when the other person just doesn't care. I don't know if you've been there before, but don't do anything other than be excellent in a relationship. Really pursue it with excellence. And if it's not working, then cut it off with excellence. Don't let it be a friend relationship. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, a friend relationship is when two people are just friends, not officially in a relationship, but they're spending so much time together that it kind of starts to look like a relationship, and then
either to other people,
or maybe to one of the people, or to one of them. Yeah. And yeah, it's not good.
It never ends well. It never ends well. So be excellent. And the last one, praiseworthy. Are you keeping Jesus as the cornerstone of your relationship, of your life? You should be doing it of your life, but of your relationship too. All these other things are held together by this one. Are you giving praise to Jesus in the way you conduct your relationship? Do people see you and your boyfriend or your girlfriend and think, that's awesome. I'm so glad they're together, and I'm seeing Jesus at work in that. And I'm seeing the way that they're loving each other selflessly, being excellent in this. And you can date someone and it can be praiseworthy. It can give praise and honor to God. And you shouldn't settle for anything less than that. Is this person inspiring you to praise Jesus, or are they pulling you away? That's a big, important question. Because if our end goal is not marriage, but something way better than that, and that's ending up in eternity with Jesus, and this person is not inspiring you to head that way, walk away from them. You need someone who can inspire you to pursue Jesus. So that's all of it. But what's really cool is after this, he says, Paul talks about a promise, and there's a payoff at the end, that what you've learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things. So don't just think them, but practice them. And the God of peace will be with you. That's awesome, right? It's not like he's promising that you're going to get the girl of your dreams or the guy of your dreams and that everything's going to work out all right, but he will be with you in that as you pursue excellence and purity and loveliness and justice and all those other things in your relationship. He'll be with you, and you will know he is with you, and nothing's going to come between you, and that happy ever after that he's got planned for you, it's yours. And I just want to add a little extra payoff, and I'm speaking as a guy here, but for the guys, as you focus on these things, thinking about what is true, what is honorable, what is just, what is pure, what is lovely, what is commendable, what is excellent, what is worthy of praise, what is hot. It doesn't say hot. As you're thinking about all these other things, then you are going to liberate yourself from this bondage we have to, I need to get a hot wife or a hot girlfriend. Or I'm not even going to consider these other people because they don't appeal to me initially, aesthetically. And you're going to start to see, as you value these other characteristics, you're going to see there's beauty all around you, sitting in these pews. And then, wow, things get exciting.